6%, Kerry 13%. National security appeared to be the top concern. 22% volunteered something about the situation in Iraq, and 12% mentioned terrorism. Many voted for what the public relations industry calls qualities or values, which are designed and projected with great care, and have about as much authenticity as imagery in toothpaste ads. News commentary focused on style, likability, bonding, and character, and on such flaws as Bush's occasional testiness, or Kerry's getting the name of a football stadium wrong. Pollster Daniel Yankelevich reported that the views of Americans who frequently attend religious services and the views of Americans who do not mirror those of Republicans and Democrats, respectively. Church-going white evangelical Protestants are a particularly powerful Republican voting bloc. This constituency sees the president as a man of strong character, honest, simple, straight-talking, determined, no-nonsense, God-fearing, a man of sincerity and clarity of moral purpose, who is on the side of good, a major triumph of marketing, which permits the leadership to carry out its programs without concern for public opinion. Extremist religious beliefs have a long history in the United States, going back to the early colonists and those who settled the continent. There have been periodic religious revivals since, notably during the 1950s, which historian Seth Jacobs suggests may have been the most religious decade in American history. Jacobs attributes the Eisenhower administration's decision to install the devout Catholic Ngo Dinh Diem to run its client state in South Vietnam, despite his recognized unpopularity and incompetence, to the great religious revival in the United States at the time. Writing in 1980, Walter Dean Burnham found the pervasiveness of religious cognitions in American political life to be yet another and very important comparative peculiarity of this country in the cosmos of advanced industrial societies, alongside the class bias noted earlier. By and large, intensity of religious belief correlates negatively with economic development, but the United States is off the chart. It is, however, only in the past quarter century that party managers have recognized that this voting bloc can be organized to shift elections to cultural issues, while the leadership carries out programs favoring business and the wealthy, to which the public is opposed, but that do not come up in elections. By 1980, some close observers were already noticing parallels between the mobilization of religious extremism in the rise of the Nazis, the German Christian Church, and a potential Christian fascism in the United States. The words of Dr. James Luther Adams of the Harvard Divinity School, who spoke from personal experience, having worked with Dietrich Bonhoeffer's underground anti-Nazi church in Germany in 1935 and 36. Fritz Stern's observations on the descent to barbarism quoted earlier reflect the increasing significance of these warnings. Journalist Chris Hedges reports that Christian fundamentalists now hold a majority of seats in 36% of all Republican Party state committees, or 18 of 50 states, as well as large minorities in 81% of the rest of the states, with George Bush playing, or being used to play, an important role in the mobilization. The importance of the phenomenon has long been recognized, particularly in Israel, recently by Israel's English-language newspaper, the Jerusalem Post, which is launching a special edition directed to the Christian right, the most powerful voting bloc supporting Israeli aggressiveness and expansionism. The most careful studies in 2004 confirmed that on matters that particularly concerned voters, they had little idea of the candidate's stands. Bush voters tended to believe that he shared their views on major issues, even when the Republican Party explicitly rejected them, as in the case of the Kyoto Protocols already mentioned. Investigating the sources used in the studies, we find that the same was largely true of Kerry voters, unless we give highly sympathetic interpretations to vague statements that most voters probably never heard. Kerry was hardly responding to the concerns of his constituency either on international or domestic issues. The latter were supposed to be the focus of the final presidential debate, a few days before the election. For most of the population, the health crisis is at or near the top of domestic issues. In the debate, the press reported, Kerry took pains to say that his plan for expanding access to health insurance would not create a new government program, because there is so little political support for government intervention in the healthcare market in the United States. The comment is interesting. A large majority of the population supports extensive government intervention, it appears. An NBC Wall Street Journal poll found that over two-thirds of all Americans thought the government should guarantee everyone the best and most advanced health care that technology can supply. A Washington Post ABC News poll found that 80% regard universal health care as more important than holding down taxes. Polls reported in Businessweek found that 67% of Americans think it's a good idea to guarantee health care for all U.S. citizens, as Canada and Britain do, with just 27% dissenting. The Pew Research Center found that 64% of Americans favor the U.S. government guaranteeing health insurance for all citizens, even if it means raising taxes. 30% opposed. By the late 1980s, more than 70% of Americans thought health care should be a constitutional guarantee, while 40% thought it already was. One can only imagine what the figures would be if the topics were not virtually off the public agenda. The facts are sometimes acknowledged with an interesting twist. The rare allusions to public support for guaranteed health care describe the idea as lacking political support, or politically impossible because of tangled politics. These are polite ways of saying that the pharmaceutical and financial industries and other private powers are strongly opposed. The will of the public is banned from the political arena. As in the markets constructed by the PR industry, so also in the democratic elections they run, a primary task is to delude the public by carefully constructed images that have only the vaguest resemblance to reality. Not surprisingly, voters disapprove. Large majorities believe the nation would be better off if its leaders paid more attention to the views of the public and to public opinion polls. But the public can be ignored as long as consumer choice can be barred in the political arena by the carefully honed means used to undermine markets. Bush won large majorities of those concerned with the threat of terror and moral values. These results again tell us very little. Popular judgments about terror are another tribute to effective marketing by government and media. The public is hardly aware of the preference of Bush planners for policies that increase the threat of terrorism, which is not a high priority for them, as already reviewed. As for moral values, we learn what we need to know from the business press the day after the election, reporting the air of euphoria in boardrooms and corporate lobby offices, not because CEOs oppose gay marriage, but because U.S. business expects a clear run now that the political landscape is tilted in favor of corporate America more dramatically than at any period in modern American history. We learn more about the guiding moral values of Bush and associates from their unconcealed efforts to transfer to future generations the costs of their dedicated service to privilege and wealth. By running persistent budget deficits, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, warns leading countries, primarily the United States during the Bush years, are sacrificing their children. The OECD's chief economist informed the business press that the current generation will probably survive, but we are going to bequeath to our children a capital stock which will be grossly undersized. The second of the twin deficits, the huge trade deficit, has also greatly concerned economists and others who care about